Okay. Hello, everybody. Excuse me. Decided to make one more video. Mostly as a thank you. I got up this morning and looked, and that last video I did on YouTube had 3,000 views on it, which is small potatoes for YouTube as a whole. But for Dabbleverse stuff, that's pretty good. I went and looked, and the last time Aaron had a live show that cracked 3,000 views was back in June, and it was a single show. I'm sure he has, many that have gone way beyond that, but he's in his downward spiral, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But I just thought that was really great. I won't lie, I was like, dang on, man, just like nice little boost to the ego to see people really enjoyed that. So that was pretty neat. And there's definitely going to be a video, like I said, for when Aaron gets sentenced. But since things are kind of dry right now, which I'm going to get into, I was like, okay, let me do something to try to tide people over in the meantime. And I had a good idea, which I'm going to get into in a second. But first, I wanted to say that in addition to the thank you of everybody watching and liking the video, a side effect of that is that I was actually put into contact with several of my Dabbleverse heroes. Shout out to the Dabbler network. I saw that he had tweeted all my videos, and Pretty Antisocial did, and I think that really helped get like a boost out with people. In addition to Melton covering my first two videos, that was huge too. So, to Patrick, we appreciate it, man, and everybody. But a little side effect, and I'm going to try to be quick about this, but it's very exciting news. A little side effect of talking to my Dabbleverse heroes is that I was put into contact with the great Moody, who you're all familiar with, and we were talking on a like a WebEx meeting about Aaron, obviously, and some ideas he had for some stuff with Aaron. And I make little comments without thinking about it, but I made some little comment. I don't know what it was, but he goes, "Oh, Kelly, you're such a lorelei," and I was like, I think I know what he meant. I go, "No way, man, I'm a Rory," and then he laughed and we started talking about Gilmore Girls for like half an hour because that's an amazing show. Turns out he's a fan. I'm a fan. So we're going off and off about Gilmore Girls. Forget about Aaron completely. But then I had an idea, and he liked it. And we are in talks now. There's a lot of work to do before it's finalized, but I'm very excited about it. But Moody and I are going to be working on a podcast together that covers Gilmore Girls, but incorporates elements of the Dabbleverse. Now, you're probably thinking that's insane, but it's going to be really cool. He and I are going to build identical podcast sets. And if you remember Space Ghost, Coast to Coast, it's going to be like that, where we'll switch hosting duties like this little piggy. So whoever the host is going to be at a desk, and the other guy is going to be on a monitor up here like Space Ghost. And then we switch back and forth. And we'll talk about Gilmore Girls, but then he's going to set up Super Tip with all our favorite voices. So just imagine how cool it would be that we're talking about that show, and then an AI voice of Aaron comes in and says something really racist about Mrs. Kim, calls her an old gook or something like that with his goofy voice. It's a license to print money as far as I'm concerned. So I am very excited about it, which is funny because I said I wasn't going to get into YouTube and become a YouTube person, but I was seduced by the idea of fame and fortune, I guess. So anyway, there's a lot to work to do before it airs, but just keep your eyes peeled. Kiwi and the Donut is going to be premiering spring 2026, and just keep your eyes out for that. If the Dabbleverse is not imploded in the meantime, because if you talk to people that don't find this stuff interesting, they're always saying that the Dabbleverse is dying and it's on its last legs. Nobody cares about John anymore. Nobody cares about Aaron anymore, which I could not argue more against that because I think it's insane. I'm insane. But this stuff is wildly entertaining. So anyway, forget about that. Let's focus on John and Aaron. Now, you notice I've got a new board here. People really love the last board. They like all the boards. But with the last one, there was a lot going on. It was very, very busy. There was a lot of information for people to absorb, a lot of different characters. So for this one, I don't anticipating it being quite as popular because I'm really going to focus on John and Aaron. And expand on something I said last time that I think is very interesting. So hopefully you like it. So we're going to go on a more intimate journey right now. Again, come with me. I hope you enjoy yourself. But like I said last time, where it just was something I couldn't get out of my head, is that these two have no direct connection that we know about. But there's so much of them just being the same guy. I was thinking about it, and I was like, there's got to be more to this. So that's what we're going to focus on. Before I get into that, though, I want to talk about the HRO stuff. Obviously, with Aaron and his breakup with Nick. Right now, at the time of me filming this, there has been no developments on that, no new information. Without getting into too much personal stuff, I am a very good investigator. And if you want to find out something about somebody, it can be done. It all depends on how much time and effort you want to put into it. And I'm not going to lie to you, I didn't put a ridiculous amount of time because this is just a hobby. But playing around for fun, I could not find anything. So it looks like, and I could be wrong, there might just be something that nobody has made public, but it looks like their HRO still has not been rescheduled. And we're only a little over 2 weeks away from Aaron's sentencing. So anything is possible. But right now, it's looking less and less likely like that is going to be resolved before Aaron's big sentencing on October 2nd, which, if you're like me, we are all excited. It's like, fuck the Super Bowl. I want to know what happens to Toe in court. You know, that's going to be the big thing. With that, this will be very interesting if this happens. If those HROs are not resolved by the time of Toe's sentencing for, again, his felony revenge porn. Don't forget, Aaron is a criminal. Okay? Forget about who you like and who you don't like. I say that all the time. The facts are the facts. This man broke the law and is a criminal, must face justice. So please don't let anything distract you from that. Now, anyway, that's coming up a little over 2 weeks away. And if the HROs are not resolved, well, then obviously Patrick cannot cover that stuff like he did the previous sentencing. And again, that's another reason why I'm making this video now is this son of a bitch with his little games and everything has been depriving me of Toe coverage on Melton, which I love more than anything. And he has really not talked about him at all. If he did, I missed it, but it must have been like a passing comment. But on his regular show, there's not been really any Toe coverage, which is what he wants. Remember, the whole reason for these bullshit HROs is his feelings were hurt because his lover Nick is gone, but then he wanted to punish Nick and also punish Patrick because he does not want anybody to see what's going on with him and to laugh at him. And that's the whole point of these restraining orders. So again, if those are in place, Patrick's not going to be there. Nick might not even be able to be there. Again, as the husband of the victim, I would assume there's got to be some kind of leeway where they would allow him to be in the court for that, because if not, that's really a piece of shit move to deprive, again, the victim of your crime from the support of her husband. So who knows what's going to happen with that. But right now, we're just waiting. But anyway, okay, sorry. My mind wanders, as you've probably noticed by now. With that, if it's not resolved, this is very interesting. Aaron gets sentenced, okay? The HROs have not been concluded yet. He goes to jail. Again, anything is possible, but I think Toe is going to county lockup for around a month. I hope more for his sake, actually, not as a punishment, but because he needs it. Kind of like a stern father with medicine, and we're getting... Oh, stern. Haha, and father. Oh, that's funny. I didn't mean for that, but it all kind of ties together. But like a stern father saying, this hurts me more than this hurts you, Aaron needs real jail time to have a chance to rehabilitate himself. So, with the HROs, if those are not resolved, when he gets sentenced, there's a lot of different things that could happen. But one very likely outcome, if he's in jail for any length of time, the judge finds out about that, they could schedule a hearing for these where Aaron is in jail, okay? And they've got him, via camera, and he's in the orange jumpsuit. Of course, it'd be funny if he had a do-rag and toe life on his knuckles or something like that. That's not going to happen, though. Again, he's not going to get raped or join a gang. It's a punishment, but it's not going to change him. Hopefully it changes him mentally, but it's not going to change him like a guy that goes to prison. But anyway, if they're doing a hearing like that, then Aaron, because he is so consumed with how he's viewed and wanting to structure a narrative, would most likely just withdraw both of the restraining orders and cancel them out in order to forgo any kind of hearing, which would show us him on camera in jail, because that would just kill him. That would destroy his whole narcissistic structure in his mind that he's built for himself. So that would be really cool. The other thing, though, is that they could kick the can down the road to where he serves whatever his punishment is. And again, he could get nothing. I think he's going to jail, but it's completely possible that he's not going to get any kind of real punishment. I do not think that's going to happen again, but, it's Minnesota, so who knows. But it is possible that whatever his punishment is, the hearings just get put off until after that's concluded, to where he can just attend it like a normal person again. And some of you might be sick of me ranting about the justice system and just how jaded I am with it, but this is a great example of how shitty our system is again, with Nick and Patrick, he filed this stuff at the end of June for Nick and the beginning of July for Patrick. Now we're halfway through September. It's probably not going to go on until October at the earliest. And then again, if something goes on with Tobin in jail, they could put it off until November or even later, which is insane because, again, this is your life. Imagine you're one of these guys and you have done nothing wrong and you've got this hanging over your head. And again, it's your life and you're pleading, please, can we do something? Even if you're going to punish me, which I don't think I'm guilty, but even if that's the resolution, can we get some kind of resolution instead of just hanging over my head? And the courts, again, they don't care about you. It's kind of like nature where it's just indifferent. If it rains on you, that's not the universe picking on you. It just rained. And unfortunately, that's the way our justice system is, where they just do not care that these are people, real lives, real problems. And I'm sorry, I could talk about that for hours, but you see how it gets me going, because I've seen from being in the justice system, criminals, innocent or guilty, whatever it is, but just see the ringer they have to go through. I'm actually one of the few people that likes lawyers, real lawyers, like in the criminal system, like a defense attorney. Because remember, imagine, okay, he's a piece of shit, all right? Let's not forget that. But imagine you are Aaron. Scary as that is, imagine you're him. His lawyer, Mr. Peterson, is the only guy that has his best interest at heart and has his back trying to help him. So imagine if that was you. That's why you should have warmer feelings for defense attorneys. The TV shows and movies always try to paint them as terrible people. But again, imagine you're the one in that courtroom. That's the guy that's trying to help you. Anyway, I'm sorry to rant about all that. But we are going to get more into when I'm talking about Aaron and John. If Aaron would acknowledge that he is a homosexual, again, that's not to make fun of him, but if he would just acknowledge that, that's another thing that I think would help him improve his life. Because again, John is 60 years old. His birthday's not for a couple weeks, but just, you're a man, round up. I'm 39, call me 40. It's not going to hurt my feelings. Aaron's 38, call him 40. Who cares? John is 59 and 9/10, just say 60. And stop dyeing your hair. Which is why I chose this photo, by the way. He looks all pale. I chose that photo back when I did my first video because John looks so shitty. Because this is what he really looks like. Other than, I think maybe these little like sunspots were added in. But he is pale like that. He has this gray, wispy hair. But he dyes it. He puts on all the filters when he's on his show doing political stuff to change the way he looks. But that's the real John. And as you can see, he looks horrible. With these two guys, though, this is probably not the right time to bring it up, but I want to say, like, look at his eyes. Is John, one of the few differences between these two is John has these, like, just dumb, dead eyes. They both have dead eyes, but John's are dumb like a cow. Most of y'all are probably city folk. We're country folk. And country folk are a different kind of folk. Where you're used to being around animals. And if you're ever around livestock where they've been domesticated for thousands of years, like a cow or a sheep or something, you look in the animal's eyes and there is something there. There is the spark of life, obviously. But you can tell there's not a lot going on in their brain. And that's John's eyes. He, again, is a very stupid man. Naturally stupid with poor genetics, which is going to get into my thing here. But he's also just, just stupid. But Aaron has dead eyes, but his are more like evil eyes, like black eyes. Like not black like criminal black, but black like the abyss, like there's nothing. He has those dead evil eyes. But with these two guys, like I was saying before, I'm sorry, again, I'm getting on a tangent, because I'm very excited about this subject matter, but there's so much more about them, and it was really bothering me. And remember, I said in my last video that if they weren't so drastically different physically, you could believe that John is somehow Aaron's dad. Now, I don't think that is 100% the case. I want to make it very clear, I'm not married to that idea. But thinking about it more, with more things, that is a legitimate thing. that really could be the truth, and it would explain a lot, which is what I'm going to get into. Now, you notice we got Jack Nicholson over here. And you're probably thinking, Kelly, what the fuck does Jack Nicholson have to do with this? Why is he on your board? Great actor. We all love Jack, but what does he have to do with the Dabbleverse? Well, something you might not know about Mr. Jack Nicholson, and it's all going to come together. All right, so bear with me. Is this man, when he was an actor, but he had not made it big yet, okay? When he was in his mid-30s, all right? Remember somebody in their mid-30s? All right, things getting crazy? When he was in his mid-30s, he found out that the woman he had thought was his mother and who raised him his whole life was actually his grandmother. And the woman who he thought was his older sister his entire life was actually his mother. So Jack found out that his biological mother was knocked up as a teenager, and because back then people had something called shame, the family, to avoid a scandal, decided to fake Jack being her younger brother, and he was raised by his grandmother and grandfather, but thought that it was his mom and dad. Now, that comes back to these guys, okay? John was born October 1965. Aaron, December 1987. Or excuse me, 1986. I'm not doxing anybody. That's on John's Wikipedia. That's on his arrest sheets. It's public knowledge, okay? John was 21 years old when Aaron was born. So the timeline matches up to where John was an adult, out there in the world making moves, before he got on with Howard Stern. It's completely possible, okay, now hear me out, that he could be Aaron's biological father. But you're probably thinking, like, he looks just like the guy we think is his father, which I apologize, because for visualization purposes, it would probably help to have a picture of his pops here. I didn't do that because that guy is not in the Dabbleverse. I didn't want to put him on here since he has chosen not to be involved in this foolishness. But if you go look for yourself, you'll see a picture of Mr. Imholte. He just looks like an older, fatter version of Aaron. But if you remember Game of Thrones, okay, you find out Jon Snow is not Ned Stark's bastard son. He's Ned Stark's nephew, and Ned raised him as his own, so he still had the same Stark blood, which would account for all the physical features. I think that's what's going on. I think that Aaron's real father is John, and the man who raised him is actually an uncle or a cousin or something like that, where John knocked up a Lady Imholte, which would explain why he looks all fucked up here. Aaron has those Imholte genes to make him look this way. But then he has John's stupidity and John's immaturity, John's narcissism. He's getting all the terrible Melendez genes as well. So those two combine in this elixir of terror and make the Aaron Imholte we know. He's got the bad genetics of the Imholte clan, and then he's got all the bad genetics and mental capacity of the Melendez clan. And again, it sounds goofy, like I'm trying to be funny. I'm not saying that is 100% what happened, but again, I explained some of these things. Besides all the stuff I've already talked about that they have in common, it really does make sense. And for example, okay, bad father, all right? That's a big one. Who's a bad father? Who do we know is probably the worst father around? John Melendez. But who's in the running for also being terrible father of the year? Aaron Imholte. Okay? Both of these men have failed to provide for their kids. John's kids are adults and they want nothing to do with him. Aaron's kids are still young, but we know that train has left the station. Unless he makes some drastic decisions, his kids, I hope, don't end up like John's kids, but are going to be like his kids in the fact of hating and resenting their father and not wanting anything to do with it. A quick side, I'm sorry, I go down the side road too much, but when I was looking for photos, again, this stuff is not hard to find, okay? If you want to find something, it's really not hard. So I hope I don't sound like a creep, but I was looking for photos, and I stumbled across one, and I'll try to be vague because a kid's involved, but it showed his first ex-wife with her new husband, okay? A guy named Balin. Stupid name, and that's saying something because I have a woman's name. But Balin, and he was with this young boy, okay? Let your imagination decide who that boy is, okay? Doesn't take Sherlock Holmes. And he was teaching this boy in the photo how to shoot a bow and arrow. And I saw that. And again, as a father and somebody having a soul, it really made me feel sad for Aaron. Because if I saw a picture like that of another man having this great bonding moment and teaching a skill to one of my kids, to where that guy was raising my kids, it would break my heart. Now, he doesn't care because he's a terrible person. Again, bad father, abandoned families. But just being a human, it's something I could not help but feel for. And I actually had some sympathy for this guy. But that was fleeting. Of course, these things never last. But like I said, abandoned family. Sorry, my chair. You probably noticed it was slowly going down. Okay, John, of course, abandoned his family. We know all about that. Then he tried selling the house that his family was living in Calabasas to, remember Lily with her whole thing about being home insecure and food insecure? That came from this guy right here. Aaron, he dips out, leaves his first wife pregnant with their third kid. Talk about piece of shit of the year, this guy. Then he petitions the state of Minnesota to pay below the minimum of child support for 3 kids. Now, again, I try to be fair in these things, although you can tell my feelings, obviously, but I'm trying to be objective. There could be something to that we don't know. Maybe he and his first ex-wife have some sort of agreement where he pays the $800, but then she comes to him on the side, and it's things that are not any kind of record with the court, but she's like, hey, Aaron, little Jimmy needs braces or something. He's like, yeah, I'll go in 50-50 on that. Or, little Sally. I'm making these kids' names up because I don't know them, but little Sally's got a Girl Scout trip coming up. He's like, hey, don't worry, I'll take care of that. Probably not, but I mean, let's give the guy the benefit of the doubt. It could be that he is handling expenses off the record that we don't know about. Again, probably not, but again, trying to be fair. So he abandons his wife, pregnant with his third kid, meets up with April. We all know the funny stories. We be our forever mommy, put the trauma of for those poor kids. Then he gets rid of April, sends her to jail. Now, excuse me, his kids are being raised by another man. John's kids are raised by another man who, all right, here we go, another thing where it's coming back together, named Aaron, okay? John has said, thanks to the great Vince the lawyer, who, again, he scares me, but he is a funny guy and he brings good material, got John to admit one time about how much John hates his wife's new husband, who is coincidentally named Aaron as well. So, again, John is possibly Aaron's biological father. Okay. John abandoned Aaron as a little baby, or even as the fetus, he's not even born yet. So Aaron has bad father, abandoned family instilled in him from day one. So then he abandons his family, taken after Pops here. Again, threw away his parents, okay? This goes back to my theory. Think about this. When he married April, or even before they might have actually gotten married, but when he hooked up with April, his parents, Aaron has told us, disapproved of that matchup. And what did he do? He threw them away, okay? He said, fuck you, mom and dad. I want this new girl. And again, think about that. If this is your mother and father, sheltered you when you had a nightmare, took care of you when you were sick, took you to play baseball or pee-wee football, and who knows, maybe he did none of that. Would help explain a few things. But assuming his parents did all those, don't you think that's pretty strange that he would just toss that away again, over some girl? Even though April, very pretty for a guy like this. I don't like blondes, as you know, but April for a guy like this on a scale of 1 to 10 is like a 15, So he throws his family away over nothing. And then he throws April away again because of all of this, okay? No family, no loyalty, which comes to what I was going to get to in a little bit about no honor. Neither of these men have any honor, okay? And real quick, you notice I have golf written in here. That was to remind me not to forget. But Aaron, as you know, fancies himself a golfer. Now, I like to golf too. I actually take care of my family and have a job, so I don't play as often as he does. I can tell you this, though. I bet I would whip his ass if we ever played a round together. And again, I'm not great, but I'm sure I could beat him because he plays without honor. His gimmies, the whole point of golf is to get the ball in the hole. And he has told us, if I get it on the green and it's within a few feet, I'm like, that's it. And the reason why I talk about golf specifically is if you know anything about golf, even if you don't like it, but if you know anything about the game, is it's supposed to be a gentleman's game. It's a game where you can call penalties on yourself. There's a lot of just the honor system with things. Like, again, you have your score out there. Say you're playing by yourself. Nobody knows what you shot. You could be like Aaron and lie, or you could be honest and like, yeah, I did terrible today. You can really learn a lot about a man's character, his integrity, by how he plays golf. And we know Aaron is a piece of shit with that. We also have the sample of John where he says he beat Tom Chiasano, who was the station manager for when the Howard Stern show was at its peak at the end of K-Rock. Although the early serious stuff was great too, but for me the best was those last few years after Artie joined and they were still on regular radio. And John was there for a part of that, and it was great. But that last like 2002 through 2005 to me was like peak Stern. But anyway, he played Tom, and you could see on that. Now, of course, John was hamming it up to try to be funny, and he was drunk. Shocking, but he was drunk. But you see, John played without honor, and he essentially cheated to beat Tom, even though, again, that wasn't a real game. It was just one hole. But again, you can tell a lot about a man by how he plays golf. Both of them do not play with any kind of integrity. Which comes back to what I was going to say now that these two have in common, okay? Lonely and no friends. This is a big one, okay? Remember John? Okay, this is a year or two ago. He essentially threw himself a party under the excuse of the Tonight Show having their 10-year anniversary. And all the rest of the staff, like, who gives a fuck about that? You know, I have stuff to do. Jay Leno didn't show up. Nobody important showed up. That was all John being lonely, having no friends, to where if he has a birthday, because both of these guys are the kind of person you can tell celebrate their birthday, which, like, you're an adult, grow up. Anything past 21, like, who cares until you make it to, like, 80 or 90, then celebrate just because you're still alive. But John threw himself that party, which I forget the guy's name, but some dude went as the spy and, you know, videoed a bunch of stuff of him. You know, I tell you what, when he was singing The Doors, oh God, that was funny. I remember I was transported back to being in Paris one time, and I went to go see Jim Morrison's grave, which is, you know, a pretty touristy thing to do, but I went to check it out, and when he was singing the Roadhouse Blues, so shitty, I just instantly thought of that and started laughing. I was like, God, Jim Morrison would probably just put a lightning bolt through his heart if he had the power to. This guy tarnishing one of his songs. But anyway, there's that. And then Aaron, of course, every year, the Steel Toe Anniversary Show. Nobody gives a fuck about Steel Toe Show. You see that those things are not any Steel Toe fans. It's just the local day drinkers and then dabblers. They go. And all it is Aaron throwing himself a party because he has no friends. It's just a thing to make him feel good, and you can pretend for a day like, hey, I'm just hanging out with the guys. We're having a good time. Both of these guys, they throw themselves fake parties under the excuse of something else, but all it is just something to force other people to come hang out with you so you can have some human interaction for a little bit. It's very sad. It's very pathetic. But again, it just shows this. I mean, who else does that? You know, you haven't seen Chad do that. You haven't seen Opie do that. Just these two. Now, again, with the father-son thing, disappointment. With the guy that we know to be Aaron's father, Mr. Imholte, it's been made very clear through things that Aaron has said and things that people brought up on other shows that, again, he did not approve of the whole April thing. He doesn't approve of Aaron abandoning his family, which, think about that. This is a dude who's not even his biological father, steps up and says, I will raise this child because he has the Imholte blood. I'm going to take care of him because a boy does need a father. And then he sees him abandon not one, but two families. Huge disappointment. There's got to be a lot of resentment there, which would make it easier for Aaron to throw his parents away because there's not that real connection there. Also, with these two being the same guy, essentially, is everything is a win or lose. Neither of them can ever accept a loss, especially with pretending they're tough guys. You know, I've been in some fights. I'm up 39 now, so I don't fight anymore. But when I was younger, I was in fights. Look, I whip people's asses. And there are many times I had my ass whipped. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've had my dick in the dirt more than once because that's part of the world. You don't win every single fight, but with these two, everything is either this or this. There is no in between, and they're always wrong because they have horrible instincts. They always make the wrong decision on things again because of the narcissism, their egos, the emotional immaturity, which again would lead them to be disappointments to those around them. Of course, lead them to be horrible, horrible fathers and have no friends. Excuse me. And also a lack of honor. You know, with these guys, the only way that people like this can really get by and have any kind of human interaction is by constantly making new contacts. you watching this, maybe you had a new job one time and you notice like somebody comes up and immediately like starts telling you about their life and they want to go to lunch or something like that. And if you're like me, you're like, get the fuck in your head. You're thinking, get the fuck away from me. I just want to be left alone because I love being alone. Um, but you'll notice with people like that, it's usually because they have already burned every bridge at that job with people that know who they are now. So they've got to immediately latch on to the new guy so they can get something out of you before you're able to either be warned by people that are already there or smarten up on your own. Great example, of course, is John. Again, back when he was on the Stern show, it was a great joke for all of us here on the radio, but everybody talking about how John owed them money. John leeching, getting free lunches. Artie Lang, who I have pictured here, and I'll explain why these guys are on here in a minute, but Artie Lang, hilarious stories about taking John to lunch like every day essentially, and of course Artie would pay, and then he would hope. Eventually he gave up, but he would hope John would at least get the tip of like, hey dude, I'm getting a $80 lunch, which is expensive now, but imagine that back in like 2002. A lunch for two people. It's like, John, can you get the tip? And then you look back and John leaves like $1 on the thing, if that. And it's like, blah, 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 I forgot my wallet. Blah, blah, blah. Something stupid. Which again, I'm sorry I get sidetracked, but again, that's why Carl is so important, because he's the first guy to really hold John's feet to the fire. Where people would talk about John being a piece of shit, we would laugh, and then they would let him off the hook. But WATP is finally somebody saying, no, we are going to hold John accountable over and over again. Hey, do you remember this shitty thing he did 6 months ago? We didn't forget. Remember this thing he did a year ago? We didn't forget. And that's great, because that is the only way people like this will learn. Now, John will never learn because, again, he's 60. That ship has sailed. He's too far gone. But Aaron, as I've mentioned before, and again, people watching these videos, thank you so much. It's very flattering. But again, like I said in my very first video, hopefully this stuff can get back to Aaron, because even though he is a huge piece of shit, Aaron, if you're watching, you're a terrible person. It's not personal. We've never met. On paper, Aaron and I should be friends. Okay, think about it. We're the same age. Okay, so I'm going down a little thing because I do this shit on the fly. But we're the same age. So if I ever met Aaron, we could be like, hey man, you remember when gas was 90 cents a gallon? That was cool. Remember Gilmore Girls? Great show. Hey, you remember when Kurt Cobain died? That was sad. Stuff like that. I like golf. He says he likes golf. I love movies. He makes a lot of movie references, which again, him being so uncool though, has made me not like Tombstone as much, just because I'm like, I don't want to be into a movie that this guy's into. But my point is, on paper, we have things in common to where if I met this guy, if he ever got a real job and we were working together, I would initially think, Aaron's not a bad guy. He's weird looking. He does put off that creepy vibe, which Anthony Cumia, sorry. Yeah, now I'm going off on a tangent. But he talked about that where one time he's just like, Aaron's a weird guy, which is a great way to describe it. He's like, this guy just is off-putting, like Robin Williams in that movie 1 Hour Photo, where we think of Robin Williams as Mrs. Doubtfire and the genie and all kinds of goofy stuff, but then you see him as this creepy photo developer who's stalking a woman. I only saw parts of that movie, so I could be wrong about it. But the point is, he was creepy, and Aaron is creepy. They even have the same glasses. If he dyed his hair blonde, he could be Robin Williams in that movie. Very disturbing. But anyway, my point is, Aaron is very off-putting. We should be friends on paper, but he sucks. So Aaron, if you're watching, point is, John is too far gone. But you, sir, you still have hope. Okay, please, be alone in your house. Nobody's watching. And just be honest with yourself, where you don't have to have this image up. And think about it, is you are under 40 years old. I'm rounding up, but you're 38 years old. Your kids are young. You still have time. You're going to go to jail, okay? You got to face the music on that, but it's not going to be a real prison term or anything like that. You'll get out in a month or maybe a few months, and you'll be okay, man. You should use that as a chance to have a fresh start. Get away from all the Dabbleverse stuff. Get away from weirdos like me that, I shouldn't know you exist, okay? You should not be on the internet. Nobody should know who you are outside of the St. Cloud radius. You should be hanging out with Johnny and Coach Scott. Oh, Johnny, thank you. Thank you. I'm talking to myself. Goddamn. But I'm sorry, but this is funny. Okay, Aaron, if he would accept his homosexuality, that would be a big step in the right direction, because he could use that as a valid explanation and or excuse, however you want to word it, for a lot of his behavior. Where he could go to his family, like his first ex-wife and his kids and say, Ashley, that's his first ex-wife, what I did was shitty, but I was just lying to myself. I couldn't accept, for whatever reason, maybe because of his, dad in Minnesota. But I couldn't accept that I'm a gay man. And I was lying to myself, and I was just telling this lie over and over, and because of that, like the butterfly effect, it spawned off all of these other horrible decisions. And the same thing to his kids. He could say, hey, Daddy wasn't there for you when you were young, and I was being a terrible father, but it's because I was not being honest with myself, and I was making myself miserable, and I was making myself mentally ill. But now that I've accepted who I am, and I can be proud and open of that, I'm able to now function as an adult. And man, let that rainbow flag fly, man. Be queer. Again, nobody really cares. It's 2025. Get rid of Nick. And Johnny, I think, is either homeless or about to be homeless. This is okay. This is gonna be kind of goofy, but I'm being serious. He and Johnny would make a good couple. Johnny's a lonely man. Maybe he would be interested in other men, and they could live together in Aaron's house. And Johnny, he doesn't have much time left on this world apparently because of his illness. I don't know if MS was that a disease or what it is, but he's dying is the point. Enjoy that last bit of time you have with the closest thing to a friend you have who could become a friend and lover. And, Johnny could be like the Gimp in Pulp Fiction because he can't walk and stuff. Aaron could just, throw him around like a pretzel and do whatever he wants, but then feed him afterwards. And, hey, Johnny, you want to go to Taco Bell, or if they have Chick-fil-A up there. I hope they do. But they could have a nice time. And it could really be the start of him turning his life around. And it doesn't have to be Johnny. I'm just saying Johnny's what's available, and I think you two would be a cute couple. But it could be something else, which, again, the reason why I had these little heads here is because Aaron desperately wants to be Anthony Cumia. John desperately wants to be Howard Stern. And Artie Lang, but really Howard is these are the father figures for these guys. John wishes he was Artie because Artie, before fucking things up, did have the love and respect of Howard Stern because Artie is incredibly talented. And again, John wishes and thinks, rightfully so, right, he, not rightfully so that he should have, but I mean in his mind, rightfully so. I just want to explain that. Thinks he should have had that spot on the show when, again, anybody with eyes and ears like, no, that's an insane, fucking Stevie Wonder could see that's a bad idea. And the same thing with Aaron. He's talked about this. In his mind, he thinks he is just as good as Anthony Cumia, just the universe aligned in a different way to keep him from being that successful. But these are the fathers they wish they had, but they're both terrible for being lazy, untalented. Oh, snitches. All right, remember, kids, snitches get stitches. You never snitch on your friends. And you shouldn't snitch on enemies unless it is something, really big where it can be avoided. But the hallmark of a man, which these gentlemen do not have, is a man honors his commitments. He pays his debts. All right, they don't do. And you don't rat on your friends. And you shouldn't rat at all. Again, unless it's something like, hey, do you know who this rapist is? Yeah, snitch in that case. But it's like, hey, do you know who stole that candy bar? Now keep your mouth shut. Which brings us to Gino, okay? Gino is not a snitch for the Aaron thing. Remember, Gino did not go to the police and say, hey, this guy was doing this and this and this. He was minding his own business, just being a loser. It's actually probably one of the few, if only, quality Gino has that you could say positive about the guy, is he didn't snitch. He's minding his own business. The police contacted him, and he's called off guard. He's like, what's going on? And he just said, oh, well, this is what I know, and this is what I don't know. And that's it. Because, again, he was solicited by the police and was probably worried, okay, crap, am I going to get in some kind of trouble now? But, again, he did not seek them out. That would have been snitching or ratting, as if he had gone to the cops and said, this is what I know about Aaron. He did not do that. But again, why he's down here at the bottom is here's successful people, people with money, people we like. Again, Howard is crazy now, but that doesn't take away this Howard. This is Howard from like 30 years ago. This is the guy we love. Artie Lang, we love. Anthony Cumia, we love, because they're all talented and they're funny and likable in different ways. These guys have none of that. But again, Aaron, if you're watching, you could still fall farther. This guy is the bottom of the barrel, okay? Like I said, John and Aaron have a lot in common. The only real differences between them is Aaron is smarter than John because John's very stupid. John is more successful than Aaron. Aaron has no success. But imagine combining them to where now it's all the terrible things we talked about in this video and others, but then you have John's intelligence and Aaron's lack of success. Okay, so the one thing that Aaron had of being reasonably smart, John's one thing of being reasonably successful, are both gone. What do you get? Gino Bisconti. He's all their terrible qualities, but he's got John's stupidity, and he's got Aaron's lack of success. You know, it's kind of like a mixed race kid where sometimes you get somebody that's half white and half black. You get Mariah Carey, and you're like, mwah, you know, fantastic. But then sometimes you get like O.J. Simpson's kids where it's like the worst of both races. And you're like, god damn. Pardon my language. I probably shouldn't use that as an example. Some people might get offended. My point is that's like Gino, where you're like getting the worst of both worlds. And, you know, this guy, I can't imagine the demons in his head. I think that's why he just cannot keep a thought together for more than like half a second, is because as soon as he does calm down and he's able to hear the thoughts in his brain, all of the stuff starts coming in of just how much of a loser he is and how he's almost 60 years old. And he's everything of Stuttering John, minus the Howard Stern show and Jay Leno, and the fact that John at one time was making good money, and if he'd been smart with it, could be well off. But he's all of that. But Aaron, where you never had money and never had success, nobody knows who you are except because of Anthony Cumia. You know, Melton, my beloved Patrick, you know, was ranting in some recent videos, just talking about how Anthony needs to apologize for Gino, and I think that's fair. Although we did hear about Gino, again, if you're really in all this stuff, from Artie Lang a long time ago, but like when I'm explaining other things, the blame does go on Anthony for giving Gino a show and paying him, making him think that he actually had some sort of talent. Artie just had Gino on to like as an opener and occasionally on his show. But comedians do that, where that's how Chad Zumach gets work. Comedians will get an untalented guy to be with them because that makes them look even funnier. Because like, hey, I'm funny to begin with, but then if this guy's going on before me and the crowd is throwing tomatoes and stuff, now when you see me, I'm 10 times funnier because you're comparing me to this piece of shit. So I think that's everything. Again, this is, again, a more focused subject, so I don't expect this to get the kind of response as the other videos, but it is something that I think is important to cover, is that these two are essentially one and the same. As you can see, it's the yin to the yang, and hopefully that will appeal to more people, because, again, John is in horrible health. He might die soon, but the torch can be passed from him to my son, Aaron, who can be the new piece of shit for another generation, kind of like original Star Trek, which I don't watch that stuff, but, you know, William Shatner, and then the bald guy, I forget his name, Patrick Stewart, thank you. You know, it's kind of like that. But again, the really important stuff, though, is what's going on with the HROs and Aaron's sentencing. HROs, unfortunately, we just do not have any answers right now. Anything is possible. Maybe tomorrow's Monday, maybe something's going to come out tomorrow, and everything I'm saying is now irrelevant about the court stuff. But it is very likely, seems more and more likely, that it's just not going to be resolved before Aaron's sentencing. And then that might be what resolves it for us. Where, again, if Aaron goes to jail... Oh, and real quick about his court thing. Don't think these people don't talk. When I'm talking about the justice system, the clerks are talking to each other. Don't think that Aaron's judge for the Kayla case has not heard about the restraining orders. Okay, I guarantee you a clerk or the prosecutor, somebody has gotten that back to them. The prosecutor knows about it. They'll let the judge know. Officially, none of that matters because it's two separate incidents. But they will know about it. And that's going to be another little weight going on the scales of justice against Aaron. Because, again, the whole reason why his sentencing was delayed is because he disregarded the court's orders. And that's why I fully believe, and if I'm wrong, by the way, I'll make a video apologizing and say, Aaron, internet, I'm sorry, I was completely wrong. But I think he's going to jail because of all that stuff. And this is just adding to it because they're seeing all this shit and they're saying, this man refuses to learn a lesson. What I was saying before about with court and you need to be likable is that all this does is it shows the court that this man has gotten no remorse. He has not learned his lesson. And if we let him off with a slap on the wrist, he's just going to do it again and again and again. So I really think he is going to face the music finally on October 2nd. And again, that's why these HROs are so important, because he is terrified of Patrick or anybody, that Sean dude. Although I don't think they would let him in a courthouse. That guy, the fucking bunny hat. But he's scared of somebody showing up that he's familiar with and being able to report accurately on what happens, because it is going to be a big loss for the toe. Everything is a win or a loss. Another win for the toe. October 2nd, mark my words, is going to be a giant L for the toe. And he's petrified of that. So he wants to make sure nobody can see what's going on with that. And once he's in jail, if the HROs ever come up again, I could see him just dismissing them, because he doesn't want to deal with it while he's in jail, because that would be far too embarrassing. So again, we'll see what's going on. I'll shut up now and get this posted. Again, I hope people like it. Thank you again, everybody, for liking the videos. If this one is interesting at all, give it a little thumbs up. I'd love to hear a comment, what you think about the trials, my theory that John could be Aaron's biological father. Again, I'm not saying that's the case, but it does warrant a discussion, because there is a lot of evidence that points to it. And it's just too perfect an explanation to not think about as to why they have so much in common. If they are actual father and son and have the same genetics, it just would explain so much. But anyway, like I said, I'll shut up. I never know how long these videos go for. I just start talking until I think I'm done. That's why I never know how to really finish them, because I don't have a set script. But be done with this, and then I'm definitely going to post something once we know what happens with him in court, because that is going to be huge news. Probably everybody's going to be talking about it, but I definitely want to either gloat and say, hey, Kelly knew what he was talking about with the sentencing. Or again, if I'm completely wrong and he gets another slap on the wrist, ticky-tack foul, then again, because if you're a man, an adult, and you have honor and don't mind losing, you can go on and say, hey, I was wrong. I just was wrong about all that. So we shall see. Anyway, I'll shut up. Enjoy your weekend. And we will see. We got about 2 weeks to go. So the clock is ticking. Very excited about it.